Thanks for joining us. We got Tyler Cole here.
Absolutely, man. Happy
himself.
to be here.
Tyler and I met, let's see, when was it? It's like almost a year or two ago now.
Yeah. I just, a buddy of mine, Alec Vidmar, he was like saying, hey, man, you should hit up Nico. If, he lives there. He's a good dude. You guys knew each other from UCF, right?
Kind of randomly. He was, I think, the president, or he was something with our CAB, the Campus Activity Board.
Okay.
And I worked at like the lower, I think I volunteered or did something and met him, I think, through that world. But he was the big dog on campus at that point. But
great guy. He basically was like, yeah, you should hit up Nico. He's a good dude and does a lot of like talent buying and stuff. So I just shot you that random email after I went to, I think it was Moon Taxi at the beach that you guys had.
Good show.
Was that Oktoberfest or?
That was FinFest.
FinFest.
Too.
Okay.
Which that, man, I want to bring Moon Taxi back again. That was such a fun.
I love that band.
Such a fun one. Now we're here. So Tyler, tell us just a little bit more about what yourself, your role now, how you ended up in Jacksonville.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll kind of start. So I was a Florida Gator. Graduated 2012 with a PR degree after I was in a band for about 2.5, 3 years. Did that whole shebang. Didn't work out, obviously.
What was the band name?
It was a band called Dear Dakota.
Dear Dakota. I think I saw your Instagram the other day. Some of the throwbacks.
It's like 16 years ago. It's like, oh, let's drop some new music. You
guys gonna go for a 20-year anniversary tour?
Yeah. If somebody pays for it, sure.
Hey, we'll book you at one of the festivals.
Hey, I love it. I'm sure all my guys would probably happily get back together.
The year of reunions. Let's do it.
I graduated 2012. I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and then I found out that I had to have it at Florida. You have to have a internship to graduate, and I found that out about 2 months before graduation.
Oh, shit.
So my counselor was like, what are you going to do? And I was like, let me figure that out. So my manager, a guy named Charlie, who was originally the manager of the band, him and I stayed in really good graces, and I called him randomly and wanted to get his advice, and he's like, would you be interested in working in the music industry? He's like, I think you'd be really good at it, because I kind of did a lot of the, managing stuff, for the band. I was like one of the older guys in the band, so I kind of did a lot of like when we would, do the tours and stuff, I'd always kind of settle up and do all that, but...
You ran the business.
I was the businessman, and I was like, 20 years old. I didn't know what the hell I was doing.
What instrument did you play?
I played bass in the band.
It's always the bassist or the drummers that are the responsible ones.
That's right, always.
The rhythm section keeping
the
it
drummers
tight.
are usually, can we cuss on here?
I can do whatever we want.
Okay, all right, yeah. Usually the drummers are the ones that are like ape shit, but.
Hey, I was the drummer in my band, so.
And you're like the chillest guy I know.
We can figure out. I will not speak about myself, but we can ask the other guys if I was ape shit. I think I was pretty level-headed in comparison to
I played bass, did vocals. We toured around Florida, and we played at Gator Growl. Opened up for.
Did you?
I think it was Steve Miller Band we opened up for.
Dude, the Gator Growls traditionally were massive shows, weren't they? Yeah,
we won like a talent competition at UF, and we were all just like, whoa. And so we went and played. We had our little single. There was a thing called Channel 1.
Okay.
Do you remember that back in the day, like in school? Well, basically, I can't remember how it all went down. My manager had like some hookup like with licensing.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly, but Channel 1 like played our music to all these like either middle schools or high schools across the country.
So like college radio, but not college.
Yeah. So that happened, and so we played like our hit. This was before like Spotify and all that. But anyways, band broke up. I got an internship through Charlie. He helped me go to Warner Brothers in radio promotion. So I was in country music mecca in Nashville, because that was another thing too. He was like, do you want to go to LA? Do you want to go to New York or Nashville? And I was like, LA's too far. New York's too cold and expensive. I was like, I like country music, let's go to Nashville, So literally just packed up all my shit and drove up there, slept on a buddy's couch for like a couple weeks, and then I ended up getting a place with some an old friend from high school.
So did that qualify? Was that in that 2-month period?
Yeah, so it worked out. I went to my counselor. I said, hey, I got an internship. And they were like, hey, Warner Brothers is super legit. Yeah, this can count. So I went to Warner Brothers. And then after Warner Brothers, I bounced to Universal, did the same thing in radio promotions. And that was really cool. I got to meet like Chris Stapleton and, Casey Musgraves, like right when she was doing Merry-Go-Round. So that was blowing up. And I met Keith Urban and a bunch of different guys. Mike Dungan, who was there at the time, was really supportive of interns. So he would always like invite me to, I think I went to like a ACM after party, no, CMA after party. I can't remember. A lot of drinking, But,
the core of the business.
But then after that happened, I didn't really know what I was going to do. It was right in the middle of a merger, so unfortunately, I didn't get hired to stay on at Universal. So then I did a thing called Live on the Green in Nashville with a friend of mine, a guy named Chris, who was running it at the time. And I met him through Hangout Festival. We randomly went down to Hangout Fest and got back. He called me and said, hey, man, I need some help with like VIP, like hospitality. Yeah. And that was a really cool gig.
That festival or event still runs, right? Or is it?
I think they took a break for a minute.
Okay. I only ask because I feel like I've seen Moon Taxi playing something like.
Yeah, they played it several times.
Okay.
Yeah, it was phenomenal, man. I mean, the year I was on it or worked, it was like a 6-week thing or 4-week thing. I can't remember, but that was great. I met so many people that way and networked and. I also ended up getting an internship at Vector Management at that same exact time, and it was like kind of it wasn't for school credit, but it was also still free. So
I love the free labor.
Did a lot of free labor in Nashville, but I was working at a restaurant during the time. So, but
living the dream.
Yeah, it was the dream, man. Looking back, I had a lot of great experiences during that time. But I was at Vector, and I was doing digital marketing. So that was one of the cooler hands-on like internships that I had, and met a lot of great friends through that. But during that same exact time, my boss at Vector, he had some friends that needed some passes to get into Live on the Green, and I was like, yeah, sure, no problem. Hooked him up. Ended up building a good relationship with one of the guys, and he's like, do you do this full time? And I said, no, this is kind of a part-time gig. I'm at Vector, and he's like, yeah, I know. Like, he's like, I actually need an assistant. I worked for a company called APA, and he's like, I need an assistant for country touring for 3 different agents, and I was like, oh, cool, So after all that kind of ended, I had the opportunity to go back to Vector, and they were like, "Dude, you suck at digital marketing. Like, this is not your world.
Move on.
Go take this gig, with this guy." So I had an interview. The money was horrible. My wife actually,
$24,000 a year.
Yeah, it was terrible. I think it was $24,000 or something. My wife like cried when I told her, I was like, hey, I finally got a job. She's like, how much money? And I was like, I think it's like $25K. She's like, oh my God.
How do you live?
Yeah. So she was so supportive, and that was kind of like, I definitely, a lot of my successes that I had was because of her, because she was very supportive. So, so then I ended up taking that gig and working in country music for 3 different club agents.
Okay.
Which was a great, amazing experience. I worked there for about 2.5, 3 years, and those guys taught me so much. And then I ended up leaving APA, and I went to UTA, took a coordinator gig under a guy named Lance Roberts, who at that time he had some legendary stuff that he worked with, like Merle Haggard, and Chris Jansen was kind of taking off at that time, and they were looking for some young agents, because they acquired Agency Group, and they were looking for some young up-and-coming people to work in their company. So I jumped on that.
For those that don't know too, like, why you're on the topic of these agencies, like, describe what an assistant does, and then we'll go to a coordinator, but like enlighten folks on like what is a day like in the life of an assistant at a talent agency.
A lot of people start in the mailroom at larger agencies and stuff, so I kind of was fortunate enough, I guess, to jump that role.
You skipped that rung at least.
So an assistant, their main job is just keeping everything on track. Like a big part of your gig is loading offers. When offers come in, you load them into a database. You chase deposits and money.
That's why they are always hitting me up.
Yeah. Even now, it's so funny. Like when people hit me up now that are assistants, I'm like, I get it. And I know what you're doing. They keep up with ticket counts. They're kind of the liaison, between the agent and the managers. And if the manager has something quick, that they need taken care of, the assistant usually handles a lot of that. So they just kind of cut out a lot of the stuff that's time consuming, very admin. But, you've got to learn all that stuff before you become an agent for sure.
100%. So then you jump to being a coordinator, and as a coordinator at that point, are you...
Coordinator in my opinion is it's like a junior agent.
Sure.
So it's kind of like you're in the minor leagues. You're not signing stuff. I mean, it could be different at any other agency. I'm just talking about how I did it. But when I jumped on, Lance was actually really cool to me because the whole reason I think he hired me was he needed somebody just to help book some stuff, and so we were signing a lot of young up and coming talent at that time at UTA, and so I was just kind of like, he kind of let me run off to the races. I mean, he was letting me book casinos and fairs. He had a giant territory, and I learned a ton from Lance, and so, but that was my role. I kind of worked under him. I brought him opportunities, and then, if it was something I could handle, great. If it was something bigger, usually like the bigger stuff like Merle and like Toby Keith was over there at that time. So anything kind of big like that, I would kind of pass on to him. But some of the smaller stuff on his roster, I was kind of handling a lot of that.
I mean, that's a really interesting thing too. And I'm sure for anyone that doesn't operate in this industry too, and even for us that do, understanding the ecosystems of an agency are so, I feel, each of them feel to be different and operate. So it's like you said, territory-wise, so how did that work for you guys? You would cover, obviously you have, your agents that represent the, the artists themselves, but are they only representing them in a certain territory? What does that kind of look like in that ecosystem?
They're all so different. I always worked in a territorial system. I was in country music pretty much 80, I'd say 95%. There was a couple of things that I dabbled in that were a little bit more like alt rock or indie and stuff like that. But for the most part, you have a territory. So for example, Lance's territory when I was his coordinator was Texas all the way up through the Midwest. So, I mean, it was probably I can't remember, probably 12, 13, 14 states. And he handled a majority of, the casinos and festivals and fairs and large venues over 1,000 cap. So, he was busy. A lot of those guys they were super, super busy at what they did. And then you have a lot of agencies that are, you represent the client, and then you touch everything that client does.
Yeah.
If it's a fair, if it's a festival, a club, theater, anything.
Well, in that case, I dig. For you, were you guys just representing your roster of clients in that territory, or were you your Toby and Merle, or were you representing the greater country roster in that territory?
Yeah, it was a whole entire roster. So when I was a coordinator, then when I got promoted, I got promoted to agent, and I became a club, strictly clubs. So I dealt pretty much with anything that was 1,000 cap and under. Okay. So my job then became dealing with, a lot of the roster. I started kind of stopped touching a lot of the bigger stuff, and I started focusing more on smaller up-and-coming talent.
Well, and that idea, too, I'm sure from the agency side is okay, now you've got a consistent person at the agency that builds a relationship with these clubs that makes it easier for you to know deal structures and however they want to operate.
And it was neat because you kind of touched a little bit of everything, you got to, work with so many different acts and different managers, and, it was a great stepping stone in my career for sure. I really, there were parts of being an agent that I really enjoyed, and some I'm actually pretty happy to not have to be dealing with anymore.
I'm sure.
So
what was one of the highlights of your agency side?
Just seeing artists grow. Being a part of something from the very beginning, and seeing it organically grow and sell out rooms, and then you get to this level, and then they're on festivals, and you're being a part of building that was the coolest part for sure. And and the perks were awesome. You got to go to a lot of cool festivals, and you really got to see a lot of things that normal people don't.
Yeah.
Which was a big part of it too. I mean, it was really cool.
If you could represent any artist at this given time, who would it be?
Oh man, that's I'm gonna think on it. You tell me yours.
Oh, that's a tough one. So this is like where I just say the first name that comes to mind, just because I like his music, is Jordan Rakei. He's like New Zealand. I think he originates from New Zealand. He's UK based, but in that kind of neo soul space.
Yeah.
No reason other than I love his music.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I guess it's kind of a strange question for me, because it's like from an agent standpoint.
Sure.
I'd probably be like, oh, what's like
who's not a pain in the ass?
Well, yeah. Who's not a pain in the ass? Who's making tons and tons and tons of money? Like Foo Fighters would be an amazing band to say you represent, right?
Hell
like,
yeah.
Oh, I rep the Foo Fighters. I don't know.
Chili Peppers.
I don't know what those guys are like behind the scenes. But it'd be kind of cool to say, hey, I'm Foo Fighters' agent, or Metallica's agent, or, like, it'd be really cool. But if I had to go with just anything, just from a pure love of the music, I've never had the pleasure of meeting them, but Incubus, has always been one of my favorite bands of all time. It was one of the reasons that I got into music. It'd probably be Incubus or Blink-182. Those would be two I would love to work with.
4 great acts all in that rock space, so I don't think you could go wrong with
and
any
Incubus has just been so consistent, over the years, and they put out great music, and but Blink-182 is the whole reason I picked up a bass guitar. I even knew what a bass guitar was, was because of Mark Hoppus, and then how I started to find myself as a musician was through Brandon Boyd.
Yeah.
And his singing, and so it'd probably be Incubus to answer that question.
All right, hell yeah. Okay, so fast forward, you're in the agency world, and you've left the dark side to come to join us talent buyers.
Yep.
So tell us about your experience now, because you've got an interesting perspective that I don't know if a lot of people have, both sides of the coin, kind of dealing with the selling part and the buying part.
Yep.
So now you're able to kind of jump ship. You're now a talent buyer. So tell us about just your experience of that transition.
The greatest thing that I've really enjoyed, and it was actually my friend Descharme at AEG. I remember telling him and calling him when I first took this gig. I was calling all my old people that I used to deal with that were all my friends, and I remember it struck the chord with me. He goes, man, he's like, the best part of this whole thing, and he's pretty high up at AEG. He's like, man, the best thing about it is you just get new projects all the time. And one of the things I didn't, love about, being an agent was sometimes it was hard. If a show or a tour was struggling, you kind of had to be living in it, and
there's no escaping a whole tour.
From day in, and people trying to cancel shows, and there's just a lot of stuff that kind of goes into it. Whereas being a, talent buyer, promoter, you have a bad experience with one show or one artist or one management team, you don't necessarily have to ever work with them ever again, and you kind of get through it, and that's what I've really enjoyed. And one of the reasons that got me excited about taking this job that I have at JJ's Live is my boss and owner is one of the greatest people that I've ever worked, with. And his whole thing to me was just book whatever you want to book. He's like, you have creative, he's like, study the market. And it was funny when I first met him, he picks me up in his giant truck, and he's just the sweetest guy on the planet. He's got 5 kids, and he's like, hey man, nice to meet you, and I jump in a truck with this guy, and he just starts driving me all through Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah.
And he's just it was kind of like a tour guide in a way. He's like, that's where Walmart started, and let's go to the amphitheater. And he's like, there's so much money, and it's it's growing, and real estate's great. And, he owns 8 different restaurants.
So he's kind of a tastemaker, and
he's very just he's super tied in with the University of Arkansas, and you know, I felt this kind of family aspect, you know, and I always loved that area when I was an agent, you know, and I used to book a bunch of shows, you know, in the market at Georgia's Majestic and stuff. But a lot of the country artists that I have, some of them were just, they wanted, you know, they needed larger money, you know, and we couldn't play these smaller rooms. I was like, man, if there would have been like a 2,000, 3,000 capacity club like in Fayetteville, Arkansas, it would have been awesome.
Well, and that's where JJ's is in Fayetteville,
right,
in Arkansas.
Yeah, we're 10 minutes from the university, but
which is interesting. Just, you know, we were kind of talking about this, but tonight you've got Flip Turn at JJ's, and we were chatting with them last week, and I was just like, you know, is that a place that you would have ever expected to end up on tour? And you know, I think most people's reaction is no, but it's really cool to see, especially like the shows that I've seen that you've been booking. It's like there's a massive demand, it seems, it feels like for live music there.
Absolutely.
A broad scope of genres too, which is super cool.
No, and that's kind of been, you know, my whole, I think, you know, 80% of my job is just selling, not necessarily the room. It's like, why should you come play Fayetteville, Arkansas? You know, like, you know, yes, there's a college here, but, you know, I've had so much education on the area in the last 2.5 years, and I've been there and I've walked around and I've spent, you know, many hours like on site. And, you know, every time I go there, I always go down to where the college kids are. I go to a random restaurant, or I go to the record stores. And so I've learned a lot of kind of the culture there. And I'm just like, it's a cool place. It really is a cool spot.
What's been the biggest, in your mind, the biggest selling point, you know, outside of the room and like the other bands that you've had? Like, what do you feel that gets bands intrigued the most? You know, like what is, or at least the management agents?
Well, I guess in the early part of it was just like, you know, I was like, we're trying to create like an intimate atmosphere in a relaxed setting, you know, and and people have money there and they're used to having to drive 2 hours, you know, to go see a show. They have to go to Tulsa, or they have to go to Little Rock or Oklahoma City. And so we've been able to kind of like get some cooler bands in there, or artists to come play. And I think that's intriguing of how well shows have been selling. You know, you're going to have your shows that don't sell. But I don't know. I think in the early days, it was just kind of about, I don't know, I would just give my little pitch, you know, hey, there's a college here, and, you know, there's Walmart money and Tyson Chicken and, you know, JB Hunt, and there's just like, come try it out, you know, and some guys, and I had some relationships too, you know, which helped. You know, I called some guys, and literally that's how Snoop Dogg happened, was a guy that I worked with at APA. You know, I called him trying to book, you know, Nelly. He represented Nelly, and then he had some opportunity, you know, he's, hey, I've got Snoop Dogg actually routing through, and you just took this gig. And so we ended up booking Snoop Dogg.
And you said that's probably one of the craziest shows in the room, right?
For my stress level, yes, that was one of the highest, you know, stressful shows. Because, you know, it was one of the first shows I ever booked. And the first show I ever booked was Jelly Roll.
Oh, man. I mean, that's
which was cool.
Super cool, and almost two very different but similar in some aspects.
No, I think, Jelly Roll was the first show I ever booked, and then Snoop Dogg. And I was just like, wow, these are the two first shows that I'm booking. You know, but Jelly Roll was all like relationships. You know, like his manager. I called him and said, hey, I just took this gig, and I saw that you guys, you know, are playing in Arkansas, and it routes great, you know, and he was like, call our agent, you know, so he gave me, you know, their agent's contact. I called him, you know, introduced myself, you know, I felt like a new salesman, you know, like, hey. Oh, you know, I lived in Nashville and blah, 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 and, but yeah, he's like, all right, great, here's the money, blah, 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 okay, cool, deal's booked. And it was nice because I knew how to negotiate those deals. And I think where we've been successful, and I've been successful in the talent buying space, is I know what agents hate, and I know what they like.
What do you think is their biggest? What is the biggest thing that an agent hates?
They definitely don't like when you beat their door down. You know, if you're following up with them every 30 seconds, they definitely don't like that. They like when you come to them with a plan and you're organized. Like, you know, we can go down a whole rabbit hole talking about holds and stuff. But like do some research. Know a little bit about the artist that you're going after. Do some research. Like look at the ticket prices. And be realistic. And the biggest thing is like when they tell you straight up, it's because, money's a big part of it.
Yeah, 100%.
And, when you are late on deposits and you're not, knocking out the admin stuff, that drives agents nuts. But like when they tell you straight up, like you get an artist like Snoop Dogg, and there's different rules with every artist, but I went to my boss and he was completely on the same page. I was like, if we book Snoop Dogg, let's send the money right away. Let's show these guys that we're legit. And he was like, absolutely. And we did that, and that's kind of been our structure ever since, Yeah,
because money talks. It's like at the end of the day, it's like if you put your money where your mouth is in any business scenario, it's like, okay, we're serious. So why would it be any different in the music business?
It doesn't even have to necessarily be like that. It's just like, yeah, we're legitimate. We're going to handle this. Like when the tour managers are trying to announce our advance dates.
Yeah.
I make sure that my team is right there, and my team kills it, man. Like they make me look great. A lot of the time. They work so hard, and they're lean and mean. From my production guy, to my production team, to my venue managers, my marketing guy. It's incredible how many shows that he puts together and announces and does all the artwork all by himself. He's got a great team under him as well. But, in the early days, he spearheaded all of that. But now we've got a team that's grown that's been great. But
it's wild. I just was looking at the calendar, and it's, you're just announcing shows left and right, and it seems like it's a constant growth curve too. And have you felt that in the last year or so that you guys have, from the market's perspective, have been able to just ramp up the number of shows that are coming through there as well? And just, overall demand seems to be continuously, on that upward
it's
trajectory.
Like anything. As you grow, more and more people see what you're doing. More and more people want to be involved. It's just like any business.
Yeah.
That when you develop and build something, people take notice, and I think a lot of people are starting to realize that, okay, this is actually a real place. It's a real market, and I know that the amphitheater has been really successful, and there's lots of competition starting to kind of bloom, which is good. It's frustrating sometimes, but it really, at the end of the day, it's good. We don't want to you don't want to put somebody out of business or try to, at least in my opinion. It's more about, okay, how can we help each other? And if they're going to focus on doing something, then you try to communicate as much as you can. So
yeah, and I think there's enough space in a market too to understand, like you said, if there's the amphitheater, those aren't the same shows necessarily that are going to try and play your room, or maybe if they graduate from your room from selling out, they will move on to the amphitheater, or even the lower tiers from the Majestic and everything else. I see it here in Jacksonville too. In some ways, we're obviously in some ways a bigger market, but in other ways we're in a similar, standpoint where it's Jacksonville. Why would people come here?
Which is, always baffling to me. I think that's probably been my biggest, I don't want to say struggle, but I was very blessed in Nashville, and when I first moved to Nashville, it wasn't a major market. Now it's if you don't have Nashville on your tour, it's what are you doing? You should be playing Nashville because it's just the mecca of music, in my opinion.
It's become the South's hub.
Yeah, I feel it. But
what do you feel like Jacksonville's missing most at this moment?
An awesome club, an awesome 2,000, 3,000 capacity club. I think that's really, to go see. Ponte Vedra Music Hall is pretty sick.
They're doing those renovations now that'll.
I enjoy that place. I've been to several shows there, and I always have a great time. But I think it's 1,000 cap, 12.
I think currently 900, and I don't know exactly where it'll land with the renovation. They're putting a mezzanine up top, I think, is what their new renovations are going to do.
I love the Florida Theater. I think it's a beautiful venue. I've seen some really cool shows in there. I saw Rainbow Kitten Surprise there, and I saw Third Eye Blind there, and
But theaters are also its own.
It's a different beast.
Yeah.
You know, there's something about buying a beer and being on a GA floor, you know, and being with 2,000 people.
The energy of all those people.
Yeah,
kind of.
I just love clubs, man.
Yeah.
I kind of, you know, I grew up, you know, loving 80s hair metal, and my
Steel Panther.
I booked Steel Panther, yeah. But I just love that energy of just kind of like living in the moment, being somewhere, and clubs are just, I don't know, they're cool, man.
Yeah.
I would rather go see a club show. If I could see my favorite band in a club, I'd take that every time over an amphitheater, over an arena, over anything. Festival, anything.
I agree. It's like I personally don't get out to a ton of club shows, or as much as I'd like to. I feel like probably for the average person, I'm still going a good bit. But, you know, there's so many shows, and I feel like in Jacksonville we've lost some momentum, but I do feel that there's more, you know, new fires kind of being lit, stuff that'll happen over the next.
Oh yeah, I mean, what you guys are doing is incredible. I mean, it's really cool. I mean, the events that you put on. I mean, that's also too, like, I love like free concert series. I mean, what those guys were doing and what they built on Live on the Green in Nashville. I mean, there was 20,000 people that would show up to these things.
Not a small number of people.
Yeah, you know, and anytime that you can kind of create a vibe, you know, I think is really cool. And, you know, when people come to see shows at JJ's Live, you know, that's what we're trying to create, is like a place to see really cool stuff that you normally wouldn't see in that atmosphere. I mean, my favorite thing, you know, about the agency world and stuff and managers was always underplays. Yeah. When you could see a badass band, you know, play in a tiny kind of venue. Not saying that, you know, JJ's is a tiny venue,
but for someone playing in an
arena, like
a
Post Malone, you know, playing at Exit Inn in Nashville. I saw Paramore play at the Exit Inn in Nashville. It's cool. I love that energy, you know, of like, oh wow, this is like insane to be a part of.
There.
Yeah, like, everybody's stoked. It's like I saw Kings of Leon like in a small like in a symphony like in Nashville, and that was, you know, that was a private event, but still like being there in that moment was really, really cool.
I think they had, when Freebird, which, you know, rest in peace, was down the street from here at our office, it was...
So bummed I never got to see a show there. I've heard so many great, amazing things about it.
That was so much of my roots, was at Freebird, and just as like a musician and playing and just learning so much about kind of the live music industry was many formative years in that room. But I think Kenny Chesney did something like that a few times.
Yeah, like Garth Brooks did like a whole like... He popped up at all these random honky-tonks and smaller clubs. Like there was a place up in right outside Cleveland, Ohio, a buddy of mine, the Dusty Armadillo.
Armadillo.
He got one of those.
What a name.
Oh yeah, yeah. He got one of those shows, and he was like, "Holy crap, man! Like, you know, Garth Brooks is playing my
how does that happen?
750 cap room."
Like they just choose, you know, they're like, okay,
it's always usually a plan.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, they got something they're promoting, or, you know, like Blake Shelton, you know, I think did something with his vodka brand.
I was gonna say, is it like product related brand?
I don't know. I think everything's different, but I can't remember why Garth was doing that. But
I mean, he's selling out arena or, you know, stadiums.
Yeah, I actually saw him in Arkansas. Yeah,
oh, nice.
Yeah, it was fun. We had the Revivalist play JJ's, and then the next night, my boss was gracious enough to give me a ticket to go see Garth Brooks the next night.
I've never seen Garth, but
then the 2 days before that, we went to Lincoln, Nebraska, and saw Snoop Dogg and Co Wetzel play an arena on 420. So that was a wild weekend. Yeah, it literally was Snoop Dogg, Co Wetzel, the Revivalists, and then Garth Brooks.
That's a fun spread of music, right there.
Yeah, it was. I mean, that's why I love my boss. I mean, he's just all over the place.
Do you have any shows you have tickets to currently that you're looking forward to attending here in Jacksonville? I don't
have any. Well, I mean, besides the Monster Jam with my son this weekend.
Did you end up going for the pit passes?
We're doing that this weekend.
Sweet.
Yep. Yeah, my dad and everybody's coming into town. But
Monster Trucks.
You know, Casey Musgraves just announced a really cool tour. Unfortunately, she's not coming to Jacksonville, so I think me and my wife are going to go to Orlando and see that.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
Oh, Welcome to Rockville I'm going to.
Nice.
I love.
And we were talking about that the other day, and it's like those large-scale festivals and Danny Wimmer, you know, and what they've been able to create.
He's a Jacksonville guy, too. It's really cool, man.
Don't know him personally, but I feel that what he has done just with his company and everything else with the festivals is a testament to like, okay, cool things can come from places like Jacksonville, Florida. But I still haven't been to Rockville in its new form in Daytona. But
I went last year. I had a blast. I had some friends that hooked me up because Hardy was playing, and his agency. Those guys have always been really cool to me. And I was like, I've never seen Hardy actually play like an actual show, and they were like, yeah, go see him. And hooked it up. So it was really cool. Great experience.
Yeah, it's cool to see, and I'm curious. In the festival realm, which so for those that don't know, there's, the hard ticket and soft ticket and all these kind of different markets that essentially these bands and tours and everything will.
There needs to be like a book, there probably is a book written about touring.
I don't know if there is
buzzwords,
and that's what we wanted to do.
It's a super soft event.
With this is like just try to, because when we were figuring it out, like we were new in the space and we're like, all right, none of us have worked at an agency, and there's always questions, and when we're training new people and trying to bring other talent buyers into the fold, it's like all these little terms and things like billing. That's one I wanted to touch on that I forgot about. But
I've been in the middle of like the whole billing scenario, but gosh, I couldn't imagine being somebody like a Danny Wimmer or somebody that is doing like a Bonnaroo. And you got it all done, and you got to deal with all the personalities and agents and managers about billing. I mean, ugh.
So we've got this, we've got soft and hard tickets. Hard tickets being more of like a traditional show at a venue. Soft tickets is a lot more of like what we do, which are either, free or kind of like hybrid experiences, right? Like, I mean, there are venues like Brooklyn Bowl and things that they define those, right, as kind of soft ticket plays as well. But then billing is like, for me, the biggest fucking headache on earth. And to Tyler's point, it is just kind of ego driven. But we're still learning, I feel like, every day, and we're putting out offers right now for all the festivals we're working on this year, and it's just like this billing thing is how we have to get creative.
Usually it's like numbers is really at the end of the day. Numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
But sometimes with festival billing, that doesn't matter. People throw that out the window.
There's no
like,
no
man,
rhyme
this
or
artist
reason.
is killing you in this space. Well, okay, I guess we're not going to play the festival. And then you're dealing with like getting offers,
and we've dealt with that.
Crumbled up and... Yeah,
it's insane to see what people expect on that front. Like, we're dealing with some of it, and it's just, there's a band that might be bigger in the market, but okay, we're promoting the festival in a regional standpoint, and within the region, somebody else is probably bigger overall. And how do you justify that? Okay, yeah, like you're selling more tickets in the market, but are you bigger in the rest of the areas that we're promoting?
And that's really at the end of the day, my job and your job is to justify that and to say like, it's one thing if you're playing a national festival like Coachella. Yeah. And I get it. There's more things that are involved that go into that. But yeah, if you're playing like a smaller regional thing, it's like, why is, so-and-so local band direct support and this guy's not? Well, it's like, man, they're selling out like...
Yeah, you're playing 200 cap rooms and they're selling 1,500 tickets in the market.
Yeah, like, I'm literally paying them more money, to be on this bill than you. But, I don't know, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's a while. That whole world is, in teaching, the rest of the team about, as we're going through that right now, is been fun, just for them to, like, see the headache that exists within.
Yeah, it's always fun to, like, watch somebody else go through your struggles that you had, but...
Yeah, and it's, but to your point, I think there isn't really a book, of what this all is, how this is all kind of happens.
There might actually be, and I probably
if anyone knows it, let us know, because I would love to read it and pass it along. But Tyler, thanks for joining us, man.
Absolutely.
Can I ask you one quick question?
Yeah.
Okay, so Flip Turn, they talked about food a lot when they're traveling, and I guess 930 Club has the cupcakes. Does your venue have anything that's...
For like the sellouts?
I mean, I know you guys got
we don't really
food.
do food, but one of the things that we do that's really cool, the owner's wife's brother is a very, very talented artist, and so when we have a sold-out show, we do a custom-made, something similar to this, honestly, like a print portrait, and he does it all by scratch, like all by hand.
Wow.
And then we do, I don't know how many they make, but we present one to give to the artist, and it's framed and really nice, and then we have one that they sign, and we have an entire wall, like, at the venue that goes up of all the sold-out shows that we've done. So I think that's kind of a cool little perk and neat thing, when bands come. Some get really excited about it and stoked, and then some are just kind of like, "What do you want me to do with this?" Like we had an artist, I won't say, but one artist literally, just kind of flew in, wasn't on a tour bus or anything like that, and we presented it to them. They're like, "Oh, that's really cool. What do you want us to do with it?" And we're like, "Oh, it's a gift." And it's like, I guess just donate it to somebody or something, but most of the time, people are really excited about it. I know that Rainbow Kitten Surprise, like when they got it, they were so like over the moon about it, which was cool. Yeah. Snoop Dogg, his mother passed away, and we actually did a portrait of his mother.
No way.
Yeah, and he really appreciated that. That was kind of neat to see them present it to him, and he was just very like, you could tell it was touching.
Yeah, that's really cool. I never thought about like the art side of it, because we've heard the cupcakes or seen the cupcakes or like the food.
Yeah, no.
The trophy at Red Rocks or.
Yeah, my team's really creative about, we always try to throw in like taste of like Arkansas, like either Arkansas like beer, or
You ever got anybody boots?
Oh no, but we gave Young Gravy. He requested some Air Force Ones. But there is a sneaker store. I know my boss took Waka Flocka to some sneaker store, and they hung out, and he went and bought some shoes, and there's all kinds of random stuff. There's so many stories.
I was going to say, what's been the best rider request that isn't just ostentatious? It's more just like, oh, that was a really...
They've all actually been pretty chill. There's nothing
anything
too crazy.
Fun, like a cassette tape of this from the 90s? Or...
Like, not that I remember. My team that does all the rider requests and stuff, they might have some, but nothing that I really remember.
Yeah, those are always fun to field and just toy around with. We've got a surprise and man, I should have thought about this earlier, and it might not be too late, but you should put rubber chickens in Flip Turn's green room tonight.
Rubber chickens?
If you can find a rubber chicken,
I'll text my team right now about it.
Get a rubber chicken and put it in there and just say from our team.
Okay.
And I will pay for it, because we had a whole discussion. They have this rubber chicken that tours with them that we guess kind of brought back from the dead. They wanted it to go away, and I brought it up because Trevor on our team has kept up with this whole rubber chicken. So
actually, now that I think about it, I don't know if this is 100%. I think I was told this, but we booked Blue Oyster Cult.
Yeah,
and I think they actually requested like a Godzilla toy.
Yeah,
some kind of Godzilla like
a cutout, or like
like something of Godzilla, because obviously they have that big song Godzilla or whatever.
We had them on the first year of FinFest.
Really, Blue Oyster Cult?
Yeah.
Wow.
That was when I was trying to appease the older demographic that.
They were super easy to work with.
They were great. They were great. It was a fun show, but happy to have some other more modern music coming up on our festival.
Yeah,
but
no,
we're right on. Thanks for joining us, Tyler.
Absolutely, man. Cheers.
Cheers.